In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt was digging in southeastern Turkey and discovered something that shouldn't have existed. 12,000-year-old temple complex built by people who, according to textbooks, were primitive hunter-gatherers. No metal tools, no wheels, no writing, no pottery. And yet, they erected 20-ton stone columns with a precision that baffles engineers to this day. Columns covered with exquisite reliefs of animals, some of which have not existed in this region for millennia. But here's what you won't hear in any documentary. Gobekli Tepe was buried, intentionally. Tons of dirt and stones were carefully piled up to hide the entire complex. It's as if someone wanted to preserve it for future generations, or hide it from them. Why would anyone bury their greatest achievement? And what does this have to do with the number 72, a number that appears in the mythology of every ancient civilization on the planet, from Egypt to Cambodia, from Babylon to the Mayans, from the Scandinavian sagas to the Indian Vedas? Today we will examine the evidence that the history we know is only the last chapter in a much longer book, in which humanity has already built great civilizations and lost them, again and again, like a clock that resets every few thousand years. If certain researchers are right, today we are in our 6th cycle, and the 7th may be closer than you think. Let's start with something that seems innocent, a number, 72. In Egyptian mythology, exactly 72 conspirators allied themselves with Set to kill the god Osiris. In Jewish Kabbalah, there are 72 names of God. The Angkor Wat temple complex in Cambodia, thousands of miles from Egypt, has exactly 72 main temples. Coincidence? Perhaps. Scientists would say that this is simply apophenia, the human tendency to see patterns where there are none. But here's where things get really strange. The Earth has a movement that most people have never heard of. It's called the precession of the equinoxes. Imagine a children's merry-go-round. When it spins fast, its axis is stable. But when it starts to slow down, the axis begins to wobble and describe a circle. The Earth does the same thing, only very, very slowly. So slowly that a full cycle takes exactly 25,920 years. Astronomers call this the Great Year, the time it takes for the vernal equinox to pass through all 12 zodiac constellations. Now let's do a simple calculation. We divide 25,920 by 360 degrees and get 72. That is exactly how many years it takes for the Earth to shift its position by 1 degree relative to the stars. How did ancient civilizations, which supposedly did not have telescopes, know this number? How did they measure it without computers and satellites? And why did they encode it in their myths around the world, as if they wanted to preserve it at all costs? Graham Hancock, a British journalist and author of the bestseller Fingerprints of the Gods, spent more than 30 years searching for the answer to this question. He traveled to over 50 countries. He explored hundreds of ancient sites, and what he discovered made him the most controversial figure in modern archaeology. His theory? There was a global civilization before the history we know. A civilization that understood precession, that mapped the stars, and that was destroyed about 12,800 years ago. But before we get into his theory in detail, we need to understand exactly what happened at that moment in history, because that's when everything changed, and the evidence is literally under our feet. Imagine this. The end of the last ice age. About 15,000 years ago, huge glaciers, some over 3 kilometers high. They cover North America and Europe. Mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed tigers, and giant sloths roam the continents, and then, in a geological instant, it all ends. They call it the Younger Dryas, a period of about 1,200 years that began 12,800 years ago. Temperatures suddenly dropped by 7 to 8 degrees in less than a decade. Imagine, in one human lifetime, the climate changed so drastically that the entire way of life had to be rethought. Then, just as suddenly, temperatures rose again. Glaciers melted at an unprecedented rate. Sea levels rose by over 120